My name is Anthony Morrow, CEO of American Eagle Gold. We came up with some great results today. One of the highlights is 77 meters of almost 1.8% copper equivalent. Of that, 1.21% of just copper. It's our highest grade pure copper intercept to date. This is a live webinar that we were recording and sharing with the public. So we're going to do a quick overview and then we'll do some Q&A. Thank you for everyone that joined. I think the big highlight for us is this south zone. You started relatively small at the beginning. We drilled hole 2201. It was our big discovery hole. It caused our stock to go up 600% in a couple days. And we did a lot of exploring. We did exploring in the main zone, the north zone. And this south zone we kind of thought was a bit bookended by hole 2315. But sure enough, with hole 41, we hit some really great min, big wide intercept, close to surface, and it gave us the confidence to keep on exploring the south zone. So I think this 2315 was a negative red herring for us, and sure enough, we've expanded this zone significantly. Neil can get into the exact numbers, but with 2546, 2548, 2549 we hit wide intercepts of mineralization that significantly pushed the bounds of this potential deposit south and east significantly. We hit really high grade. We always said we're looking for a quote unquote jewel box. If there is a jewel box, that is maybe one of them. I think we know that there's an ocean of copper at NAC. It's the reason why we got onto there. It's mineralized all the way throughout the system. The whole point for us is to find stuff that's close to surface that can be mined to pay off the initial capital, the mill, the mine right away. And I think we're close to that with this whole area where O1 is, 17. And then we found some really high grade that connects the stuff at surface to depth. And this stuff at depth, we've been following up with future drill holes that will be released that are hopefully, I guess, visually going to expand the zone. So these grades at depth are mineable, we believe. So the whole point right now is to continue to drill, to expand it, and to connect it and see how big it gets. And with this drilling, as it's going further east, it looks like it's potentially connecting with this, quote unquote IP embayment zone that we haven't yet drilled. We have a lot of drilling left in the season, around 12,000 meters, and we have 3 rigs going. So our one rig's just focused on the south zone, and our other rigs right now, it's in the hole where 59 was that visually discovery hole right in the middle of the stock that hadn't been drilled. We're putting our third drill hole in there right now as we speak. But our other focus is we're going to go back to the north. We got a South 32 hole there. We're going to go and some of the other heli hole focuses we're actually going to drill. We're going to drill this IP embayment zone. So we have a lot of stuff we still have to do this season. And as well, Neil can jump into this, but if you look at the eastern extension of our stock, where hole 53 and now 66 is, we've also hit min there. So it's just about connecting these different zones, connecting that zone to our main zone and back to the 59 zone. So I believe that as more and more drilling happens, we'll be able to connect everything, find some higher grade zones, make new discoveries, and really prove to the public investors and South 32 and tech that this can be a mine, not just, at the next copper cycle, in this current cycle right now where we see $4,000 gold and $4.55 copper. So I think the whole point is we want to put as many meters in the ground. And, if the public gives us the love and our share price goes up and we can prove the cost of capital is worth it, there's a very big possibility that we can drill in the winter. But our stock's got to go up, and we hope and expect with future news results coming out that our stock will go up. But we're just drilling and we're giving the public as much transparency and information as we can on a live basis, which is why we've done this live webinar. So, Neil, maybe you can provide some more context with some images and maybe a model to show the significance of 48 and 49, how it may connect. Because I think what the public sees is they see an intercept at around 680 meters, but there's more to it than that. So I'll let you share screen and give these 25 investors a little bit more context.
Yeah, so what I'm going to share is a an interactive 3D model that our Geo Nick Dudek has made up, and these are really useful for being able to share the information and have people look at it. and I think I've shown these before, but it just runs in a Chrome browser, so it's a pretty neat little feature that we've been able to put together. And once we tweak and refine this, we should have something like this available for investors to play around with. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here. Um, there we go. I don't know if everyone can see this here.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, so what I have up here is the rough outline of the where we understand the Babine porphyry stock rocks to be primarily located, whether that is one big plutonic body or a series of dikes. That's still a big question. The drilling within the stock, as you can see, what we have understanding of right now is very sparse. And then the holes up here are the holes that are in our latest news release. So 49, 46, 48, and 44. And so what these holes have served to do is really, really expand both the east-west and north-south footprint of the south zone. And I'll put some of the historical holes on here in a second. While really, really going to prove up some very, very enticing grades. Like there is, we know that there is a plumbing system here for bringing in the fluids that are enriching everything, and we're seeing some direct evidence of that over a pretty widespread distance right now in these holes at a variety of depths, and in a variety of different lithologies. It's not just confined to the conglomerate now. It's actually dominantly hosted in the finer grained rocks, some of the dikes below that. So um, and I'm hoping, and as we step to the east, in units above as well as we get closer to surface. Um, so yeah, if we bring that up with the previous release where we had 39 way to the west, hole 41 was the fence hole off of 15. Rest of the south zone holes, so the bulk of the historical higher grade south zone uh, is like Tony said, about 200 meters to the north of the intercepts that we're hitting in this latest release, um, and it all comes together to just show this very, very widespread footprint of mineralization. And we bring all of the holes drilled to date on the property, factoring in the less confident historical information, and then our much more confident drilling. It just goes to show how much is still open and how much potential there is to add to this already really, really compelling story in that. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's questions specifically about what we've hit. I think Tony has a link to some of the core photos. I'm not sure if those have been posted, but very, very, like very high tenor sulfides, a lot of bornite down in 46 and 48. Um, and and yeah, we've done some pretty good follow up on this already with some holes that are waiting to be released, and we'll have more drilling as the season progresses. We still have about 2 months of drilling left, a little bit over 2 months of drilling left. So yeah, still a lot left to do.
Maybe show us how the mineralization can connect, from depth and what we're seeing in 48 to some stuff in surface.
Yeah, so we've done it just confined to the south zone. Right now, just a really rough sort of outline of the higher grade mineralization envelope to show what we've properly defined. This is by no means constraining that mineralization, but this is kind of the volume that we're seeing so far, and it's emerging to be quite good. Uh, there is a link to the mineralization through the main zone and to the north zone as well, to some of the deeper and shallow stuff up there. Uh, and so really, with more drilling density through here and more expansion out to the southeast and to the northeast, um, yeah, it's too early to put concrete numbers on the proper volume of what could be economically mineable mineralization, but it's looking quite positive right now. Uh, but again, we have definitely more drilling to be done. You can see where we've done the follow up so far, and everything else that just remains open. So yeah, already emerging to be a nice sort of steeply plunging, really nicely mineralized zone. Daylight's at surface with some really, really good gold grades, and it's a pretty smooth transition down into much more copper-rich rock as we get to depth, but with some still really good gold support. And like some people have pointed out online, there's some excellent molybdenum support as well. There's some really, really nice coincident molybdenite mineralization in with the bornite and chalcopyrite at depth. And that's never a bad thing either. So yeah, we've got, this is looking great just from the copper and gold alone, but we've just got that extra little sweetener as well.
Well, that gold blob, the rough dimensions are, and Neil said this is based on an RBF algorithm, and it's just contextual and hypothetical and projecting, and it could get bigger or smaller and higher grade or lower grade based on what we're drilling. But just that
Well, it
that
can't
rough
really get
blob,
smaller. This is confined. This is pretty well confined. I
music
don't
to my
want to be
ears. So
there.
that
It
that,
can
that
only
the
get bigger.
the rough meterage is about 1,000 meters deep and 650 by 700 meters across. So if you times that by 2.7, which is the rock density, you get to about 450 million tons. And that's just one part of our property. And before we go to Q&A, maybe we could just highlight that area, 53 and where 66 is, because I think a lot of the investors kind of focus on the south zone and the area where 59 is. But like to talk about this area 53 and how it may or may not connect to different parts of the
Yeah,
property.
again, hesitant to go into too much pre-assays, but we like what we're seeing so far. Off to the eastern side of the stock. So we've gone to the center of the zone, um, a little bit south of what would be considered the historical north zone, the near surface mineralization, but pretty much on latitude with the deeper mineralization we found in holes 4 and hole 12 in 2022 and 2023. And what we ended up seeing was just really consistent, good alteration, some really nice, consistent, more frequent, more common bornite, chalcocite, chalcopyrite veining in the stock rocks, um, and then the odd, really really nicely mineralized, what we've termed copper dikes. These dikes that are maybe a more monzonitic composition that have just nice bornite, chalcocite to chalcopyrite filled murialytic cavities, and just more dense dissemination. So we're still putting that picture together as well. So there's a lot to be, I think, excited about what we found off to this eastern side. Um, and then the picture's still emerging of how that ties together with 59, 64, and I think now 67 off of this zone. When we first started these holes, this was a South 32 plant hole, and you know their plan on this is a little bit different than what our plan is. I think down the road we all have the same goal, but their goal is to, you know, as quick as possible, figure out if this is going to be something that's viable. And that means big step outs, right? So this was a very large step out from historical drilling and any drilling we've done. There was a few really shallow historical holes, but even still, that's a big distance between them. Um, and I don't think we had a ton of reason to think that these would be all that well mineralized, and it was looking, a lot better than I think certainly I was anticipating. So, and there's literally no drilling. There's absolutely no drilling in here. This entire stock body was written off as not prospective by the previous operators. So beyond a few like 1970s backpack drill holes that barely made it through overburden, there has been no testing of this volume of rock, and that's why, you know, even I don't want to say that we're anticipating jewel box grades to come out of these holes, but it's certainly not going to be dead. And that's very encouraging for, again, just building up the scale on this.
Yeah, and look, we have three drill holes in that area where 59 is now, and we don't know what the assays are, but we have three drill holes in the area where 53 is now. So obviously, it's an area of interest that we're focusing on, and yeah, and you'll show really quickly just the depth. So even if you look at the middle of the stock there, where 59 to 64, if you zoom in, nothing is drilled at depth. So this is all, if you look at the plan view, yeah, there has been a couple holes, but in terms of the stuff at depth, this is the whole porphyry stock is essentially undrilled.
Yeah, they
So
were quite shallow, and this is perspective view, so it depends on how you're looking at it. If most people familiar with viewing leapfrog models would be in an orthographic projection, so just bear that in mind if you're for those a bit more in the know looking at this. It's yeah, we're still seeing quite a bit of ground to test below the historically drilled holes. And again, I think as we touched on before, the more and more we drill, especially in proximity to these historical holes, the more reason we have to think that there's. I think the historical holes really undersold what is there, both in terms of how they're plotted and what grades they were getting out of them. We've gotten pretty close to some historical holes now and are returning significantly higher grades than what were indicated originally back in the 90s. That's likely a combination of better assay techniques, and we're just drilling much larger diameter core, right? It was all BQ core. It's not representative, especially with gold, especially in cases where there is nuggety gold. The larger diameter that you drill, the more representative of the rock that is. So yeah, a couple of reasons for that, but that's something else to note as well.
yeah, people ask why we haven't showed a lot of the historical stuff, and we do show it, but not in our kind of presentations on our website. But the big thing for us is our biggest investor until South 32 came in was Tech. And the first thing Tech said would really resonate with me is throw all that historical stuff out the window. I think when they did the analysis, about half the holes either weren't in the proper collar location that they plotted or we drilled in a different direction. And he added in the fact that they did a different assay method. They said kind of start from fresh. So Tech, who's our biggest investor, told us that. That's kind of what we went with. So, and a lot of our drilling is kind of proving what they said in the first place. So that gives a little bit of background. Now before we open up the floor for Q&A, Charlie, I know Charlie's on the line. Charlie, do you have anything to add to what Neil said?
Yeah, sorry I jumped on a little bit later. Yeah, you bet. No, that was great, Neil, and point taken, Tony. One comment to follow on from the historical stuff is, it's also proven very valuable when you see one of these shallower holes and it's got a broad intercept, and it may not be boomer grade, because a lot of the stuff, shallowly hasn't been until more recently. But when you see something with a broad intercept with half decent grade, say a little less than point 0.1 and, tens of ppb gold, that's a spot to go after. And that's really worked out well for us. Um, and then a couple of other points, about the 59-64 area. So if you show that in plan view again there, Neil, I'd be point that out. That is between there and the sort of main zone to the west where we've done, all our drilling. That is a very, very poorly exposed area, like almost zero outcrop. So the outcrop is kind of on the margins of things. So, you're pretty much blind other than geophysics and previous drilling when you're going in there. So, having hit some mineralization in there, very, very encouraging, I would say, because you've got no surface map to really guide you at all. And then lastly, that drilling that you were talking about around 63, kind of in, just to the east of the sort of connector zone that connects the north and south zones. Yeah, in there. We're gaining a bit more information on these copper dikes, and then there's this other category of dike, both that post date the Babine feldspar porphyry, so they're younger and mineralizers. Those things, we're getting more information from those holes on the orientation of those things. So that'll help guide us when we return as we are going to do to the North Zone. So, there we've got these various dikes and intruding the Babine porphyry, and we just need a better geological framework to guide that drilling. And in concert with that, we're rehabbing some of the old exploration trails that I got to the north so that we can actually drill some of those holes, including, one of the big step out holes at South 32 has the rights to drill and has spotted with access trails with a skid rig. So we won't have to use the heli to do that, and therefore less expensive. Then we'll tackle that North Zone again. So it sort of seems like the forgotten child for now, the North Zone, but we're coming back to that, and we're going to go after it before the end of the season. But that's more or less it for me.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Charlie.
Yeah, you bet.
We'll open the floor for some questions. So if you have any questions, okay, well, I've got a question already. So from Neil, he wrote it. No, sorry, from Nate. I'll read it. Hello, team. Congratulations on the results. Here's some follow-up questions. Can you elaborate on the high-grade mineralization in hole 48? What is the speciation that is causing the higher grades, and how does this mineralization reflect mineralization hit to date? So off to you, Neil.
Yeah, the mineralization in 48 was a very similar association between where the grade starts and the host rock for the mineralization, as we see traditionally in our zone off to the west of the main drilling, where we get into the conglomerate and disseminated sulfides start to pick up. And that was great. It was great to see that. It was good, consistent grade, not these booming copper grades that we see down deeper. But that continued pretty consistently with a few punctuations of some really nice, some very dense disseminated mineralization proximal to some of the diking. As we got deeper, we started to see a couple different things. There are the anhydrite veins that bring in bornite, molybdenite, chalcopyrite. These are associated with some of the spikes in gold grade. So often those will run a gram per ton when we're hitting those a gram per ton or over. But the bulk of the mineralization, the really booming grades, are in these zones where there are just really irregularly anastomosing sulfide dominant veins cutting through the finer grain sedimentary rock below the conglomerate, and a corresponding real bump in density of disseminations. Disseminated calco, there's bornite flecked through it. Those veins themselves have really striking bornite chalcopyrite affecting them as well, with a little bit of subordinate molybdenite as well. So it's a style of mineralization that we haven't really observed before. The closest thing, I guess, would be the better mineralization we saw down deep in 2312 and 22.4, where in proximity to some of these copper dikes, which themselves ran really decent grade, was a big uptick in the amount of disseminated bornite and chalcopyrite in the conglomerate. Now that it might be a very similar driver of mineralization, right? The conglomerate is going to accept the mineralization a little bit differently. It's more porous. It has more opportunity for those fluids to saturate through and percolate through, rather than some of the more finer grained sediments, which might be either a bit more brittle or just channelize those fluid pathways a bit more than the conglomerate would, resulting in the more dense mineralization. So it's, again, there's such a big distance between those zones, though, that there could be something else going on, right? So it's the same sulfide speciation we're seeing, the same bumps in bornite to chalcopyrite ratio. It's at a position I didn't expect to see that much bornite. We kind of had our sulfide speciation model drawn up with sort of a bullseye of the hottest, bornite chalcocite zone, kind of down deep, right around where we're drilling hole 53 off to the east side here, up around this latitude. So it was really, really good to see it down deep over a pretty broad zone in the south zone where we hadn't encountered that style of mineralization before. We had some hints of really decent bornite, but it was a lot shallower and a lot further off to the west than hole 17 and 31. This is stronger grade and more consistent down deep in 48, 46. So that's, yeah, really, really good to see. And, possibly kind of its own thing.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Can you elaborate on the high grade mineralization in 48? What is this? Did I just ask that question? Sorry. Can you
I
zoom
think
in on the
that's,
model and highlight the upcoming holes and plan in section to show how the follow-up drilling is looking to further link the mineralization trend going southeast?
have that on there and take the historical holes off. Smooth this a bit. So yeah, so the bottom of 48 here, where my cursor is, there's a few holes we have to follow this up, but these are really sizable step outs. We're talking like 150, 200 meters plus. So there's immediately 52 and 55, as well as 57 coming through at a bit of a different angle to fill in this really large gap between 46, 41, and 49. And that's what we have drilled right now. We're working on, once we interpret the results of these holes, where to design collars to follow this up. We have really good, like Charlie said, really good trail access up around this sort of area, and we can kind of come in at a similar inclination and azimuth as 48, 44 did to try and follow this around to the east. But we're also going to be testing this similar host rock, we think, and similar position relative to the rest of the stock and relative to the northwest southeast trending magnetic fabric in some of the heli holes that get planned up. Now these are holes that are a little bit further to the south and much further to the east.
The
So
IP embayment.
very the IP embayment, exactly. Embayment. Very keen to see what those come out with. And that opens up a very large volume of untested rock to us getting some good information from in the immediate future. So yeah, that we'll have that information within the month here.
Can you elaborate more on the copper dikes hidden in 53, 63, and 66?
You might
They're
also want to throw hole 9 on there. That would show, we're drilling from around there and drilling west from that spot just to pinpoint it a bit more.
Yeah, hole 9 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there'd be a collar plan drilling due west off of the hole 9 location, and then about 200 meters to the southeast and southeast and or southwest and southeast. We've got collars planned as well to fill that area in.
Yeah, and those would be drilling west across that whole system and
Yeah,
across a bunch of north-south magnetic trends that, are kind of analogous to that whole trend immediately west of the stock where we've done all the drilling. So we're pretty hopeful about that, and what we saw in 9 at the top of 9, could well be part of that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Sorry, Tony, I scooped you there.
Scoop me as much as you want. Can you elaborate more, Neil, on the copper dikes hidden in 53, 63, and 66?
I mean, Charlie might be better suited to speak to that because he's been on site more recently. But from talking to the team and looking at the photos, it's very similar in appearance to the more classic copper dikes, the greener, what actually works out to be a monzonitic composition. I think Charlie stained it. There's a lot of primary case bar in it. And these muralitic cavities and other just more dense disseminations of chalcopyrite, kind of a transition between chalcopyrite and bornite, and even some chalcocite. So yeah, I think we had a pretty decent stretch of that in 63. Like
Yeah,
close to
yeah,
two.
that's right. I
Yeah.
mean, Those things are also, just about the same age as these DSE things, these
Mhm.
serrate textured intrusions that we see, mo most commonly in the north. We see them elsewhere too, and they're more or less the same age, and they cut the Babine feldspar porphyry. I think we've talked probably at length about them before, but yeah, the merolytic cavities are essentially the same as what we call an amygdala in a volcanic rock. So when the volcanic rocks are erupted and they hit the surface, they have gas bubbles, and then sometimes those gas bubbles get filled with the, quartz and feldspar, and they make geodes and things like that. But in this case, they often have sulfides in them, so they're just, boomer, or can be boomer. And the other kind of cool thing about them is they're the least altered looking rock that we have on the property. You look at them and you think, oh, there's a post mineral dike, but in fact, it's the thing that actually runs best, even though it's the least altered rock in the drill core sometimes. So it's pretty amazing. And like they post date the Babine feldspar porphyry. So I think, when you're looking in the Babine and you see mineralization, then you must be near one of these things. So if we understand the orientation of those things and we can see where they kind of come together, that will help us target better. And when these things all come together, particularly with the earlier mineralization, which is kind of what we're drilling down in the southwest there, I think we stand a chance of hitting Tony's jewel box. So um, we're always searching for that, and we're certainly finding some pretty nice jewel box stuff. But yeah, that's one of the things I find very exciting. And but again, you have to kind of build that geologic framework, and when you're lacking good exposure at surface, you don't have the understanding that you might get on a property that is well exposed at surface, because you get all that geometric information, and here we kind of have to build it with the drilling.
So Charlie, a little bit of news update. People don't like the word jewel box anymore, so we're gonna call them the Sweeney zones.
The
So
what zone?
the Sweeney zones.
Oh my God. Okay. I
When they
kind of
when they
like the
get hit,
jewel
the stock
box
will
thing.
go up. So
Oh, okay.
we'll play on words with Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle, and
Okay, I'll
actually got
pedal back on
involved and
that one.
stock went up. So we're gonna call them the Sweeney zones to add a little context. Um, so I'm gonna skip one of Nate's questions and let Micah come in. Micah. If okay, so thanks, Micah. If I may ask a beginner's question, all questions are good questions, so don't worry. But thank you for starting with that. You mentioned earlier that the share price would need to increase in order to justify winter drilling. Could you elaborate on why the share price plays a role in that decision? Um, Especially since the company appears to be fully funded for at least two more seasons. Look, that wasn't a bad question. That was a great question. Look, if we're hitting what we think is good stuff and our share's not going up, then we have to readjust our plan, spend off-season modeling, and hit even better stuff and grow this thing. Because quite frankly, yes, we do have a full balance sheet, but we're not the first and we won't be the last to have a full balance sheet. Most companies that have it seem to waste it. There's a company that was in the Tutagon that had $40 million and spent it all in two seasons, not to name names. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we always have at least one full season of treasury available to give a full season. So 30,000 meters plus, which is what we have. We actually have probably around two seasons, but we may drill longer this season. We might have a bigger than 30,000 meter next season, and everything closes down around Christmas time. So it doesn't really make sense to stay there past then. So that's kind of the reason. It's all about cost of capital. The market's giving us love, we'll give it love back and we'll extend the season, but we have to do that with great results. And we believe that we'll follow up these results that we just gave with further good results. We've only given what, 12, 13 holes of our 45, 50 hole season. So still the beginning stages, but the next 2 months are going to be really telling to see the direction of what we plan to do in the off season. So I give about a 50-50 chance that we're going to keep on drilling, starting around January 15th once the NAT camp opens up again after the holidays. But that's kind of a bit of a background on that. That makes
Yeah,
sense, Charlie and Neil?
yeah, it makes sense. It just to add to that a little bit, it costs more money regardless. We'll be skid drilling in the winter if we're back there. But camp costs more. There's way higher fuel costs for heating the coil stoves. There's more likelihood for things to go wrong, unplanned weather events. If there's a massive dump of snow and the guys can't get to site, then you've got that downtime to wait for the roads to clear. And it's all kind of up in the air. If it does look like there'll be active hauling up there in the winter, which is right now looking like 50-50, then it becomes a lot more viable and cheaper. But if it's just us up there, then yeah, it has to really, really be worth it. It has to be something that is immediately marketable, doesn't detract from a much more directed and expansive summer season where like Tony said, we'll drill 30,000 meters, right? So yeah, it's doable, but there's a number of factors that we don't have to worry about through the summer and fall season drilling.
Look, if this 59 turns out to be what we think it can be, and this IP embayment zone turns out to be what, a lot of these investors think it can be, and we got a tiger by the tail on the south zone, we might only put 3 holes in the IP embayment zone. We might only put 3 holes in the 59, but if the assays come out good and we have good targets, that winter drilling wouldn't be to do kind of what I call wildcat holes. They'd be to follow up, hit the juggler on those holes to give us good results. So, time will tell. We're still at the early stages right now. But one thing I can say is that we have 4 rigs now on the property. They're not spinning, but we have the ability to turn one of our current skid rigs into a fly rig. We're a little bit bottlenecked by our water, so it's not that we can't have 4 rigs spinning. We only have water for 3 rigs, so we do have the ability to fly multiple fly rigs, so we can hit all of our targets that we want to hit. Because 59 is turning into more of an area of interest, as is the area with 63, and we still have to hit South 32's holes in the deep, deep southeast, etc. So we're gonna follow our plan, and we're gonna hit all the holes we plan to hit. And sure enough, some of them have hit so far, so we're putting more holes towards there. So again, really good question. And to follow up on Neil's one thing, it is a lot more expensive. You got to take into account health and safety as well. But there are some things that are cheaper in the winter. It's actually easier to get access to some of the areas. It's easier to make trail in some of the areas. So some of those, what would have been heli rigs during the summer season, actually can be trail access rigs during the winter. So you can offset some of those higher costs, but overall, it's probably around 25% more expensive, I would say. Another question from Nate. Nate, thanks for filling up the time with all these questions. It's great. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to shoot. Can you zoom in on 48 in cross section to highlight the zone width between 44 and 1 to highlight the density of drilling to date in that new zone? And Neil, we might want to touch on this kind of new collar that we're about to start drilling in the next couple of days, coming from the 4950 collar that's going to kind of fill in some of that gap where 58, etc. is, because we do have some potential high grade in there and huge gap that we have yet to drill yet.
Yeah, so there's a pretty sizable gap between this is looking directly perpendicular to the plane of drilling. They're not quite on the same, like they're veering off a little bit. But it's close to 200 meters, at least 150 meters distance there, depending on how you draw the line. It's and again a similar distance still between the really nice high grade zone in 46 and the nice high grade zone in 48. But you can see in all these holes there's this association of the grade picking up. Kind of when you get to a certain depth below this less mineralized unit, and actually you can see the kind of strike of it down here. So even though it looks like it's fairly long in the hole, it's actually not that big a zone of less well mineralized rock. The top of hole was really solid in 48 as well, which is great to see. And same with 44 and 46. So yeah, there's these are not holes that are twinning each other or drilling into the same thing. These all serve very well to expand. And yeah, the higher grade mineralization we see in 48 is actually a little bit higher in relative elevation to what we see in 46. And you can see from the future releases, there's still a lot of room in there to follow that up. So it's yeah, I would say stay tuned for those. I'm very keen to see what we see as we continue to step out from this further still.
And another question, can you elaborate on the potential for what's being hit in 48 to be traced up dip to 17 and 31 and possibly to hole one?
Yeah, so the intercept in hole one is really interesting. Uh, so hole one, we have that on here. So hole one is this zone down here. So it's entirely within bad beanstalk. Uh, there was a really nice 20-meter stretch down deep in hole one that was running close to 2% equivalent, I think. It was really nice. And it was just massive chalcopyrite veins, and some really nice bornite kicks in that as well. And then we got back into more standard beanstalk rock with sparsely distributed veining. Um, it is somewhat compelling to see another sort of jewel box worthy zone down at a similar depth in here. Um, but I think it's still a long way away. And we see discrete zones like that all over the property. Maybe not as quite as long as hole one, but I think hole one was a function of yeah, just hitting a slightly higher density of these veins that are, we have zones like that up in 35 at the north end of the property. As for connecting everything to, let's just turn these guys off and go back to our previous news release. So hole 41, which was really good. You can see hole 49 took a bit of a kickoff and kind of veered towards hole 41, which is why we ended it where we did. We were already pretty confident that it's pretty solid. If we bring on the rest of the South Zone holes where we see 17 and 31, see, it looks like 31 wasn't on there, but yeah, 31 there. There's a bit of a gap in there, but I think it's not unreasonable to conclude that this is likely a zone that's broadly continuous kind of down to 48. Again, 57, which we've drilled, is going to hopefully help fill in that picture. There's some more drilling in here to confirm that, but right now we're pretty confident on the drill spacing as it is. But yeah, it's a broad zone. It comes close to surface here. Off to the west, we have some good early visual indication that we've got some really strong mineralization off on some of these holes we've drilled out to the east. So 62 has actually had a really nice stretch of mineralization within the conglomerate higher up, a lot stronger than we were seeing in these holes we've drilled to date. So, that's positive as well. Still, it's pre-assay, so I don't want to caution people there, but yeah, there's, just geometrically, it's complex, I should say. It does look like it's broadly continuous with 17. So yeah, whether that's continuous with hole one, unclear at this point. That's a pretty big gap between those and very different host rocks. And that we know alone plays a pretty significant role in how the mineralization is expressed.
Yeah, in our news release, I think we mentioned we had 90 meters of 0.9% copper equivalent at the end of 46. And of that, I think 12.5 meters of it at the very end of the hole was 1.32% copper equivalent. Of that is about 0.67 copper, almost half a gram gold. But we just had operational issues. We had to stop the hole, but it leaves a lot of blue sky there. And I guess it kind of dovetails into Nate's next question, which is If confidence is established that 17 can link up 48, what's the priority infill and confirm or stretch out the strike, drill deeper and see where it goes, or all of the above?
Uh, yeah, all of the above. There's some more info to get still from holes we're waiting on results for, and then it's a matter of looking at what makes the most sense on site, where the best collar location would be to put infill in there. You know, porphyry resource guys will tell you that we probably don't need infill on that, given the spacing we already have. Uh, that's already pretty confident. Um, but again, this is if we if we show that these zones stretch further to the south and further to the east, um, as I suspect they do, um, then there will probably be multiple additional follow-up holes to show the continuity of grade through these zones and help trace it to surface both to the east and to the west. So yeah, lots of work left to do still, but very very encouraging so far.
Okay. And I guess I had another question offline, how much is South 32 involved? I get this every time. So South 32 is very involved. They have a technical committee. We meet with them once a month. We have a meeting with them today about our plans for this IP and zone and this new area of interest where 59, 64, and 67 are right in the middle of the stock because that was their hole. So we want their input. But they're very invested in us, personally and, financially, and they want this to work. So it's nice to have another team there that's providing us resources, especially in a time like this where all of our team at CJ Gregg and American Eagle has boots on the ground, analyzing core on, working 14 hours a day. So it's nice to have other geologists that are kind of helping out with some of the planning. So thank you, South 32. And I guess thank you for everyone for joining this webinar. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. If anybody has a question, send it in the chat or take yourself off mute right now. Otherwise, I'll close this down and I'm always available for one-on-ones or you send me an email, answer questions. But anyways, I want to thank you all. American Eagle Gold, love these drill holes. We're going to keep on drilling. We've about 12,000 meters left this season if we don't continue into the winter. And we have, just under 40 more holes left to assay. So we got a lot of news out, and news will be going out right until March. And we're very excited about this. And, we know it's a big system. We think there's high grade to help finance and build this mine, so this mine can run for 50 to 100 years, just like Highland Valley. But we still have a lot of work to do, but we have all the ingredients for a great dinner. So we're gonna keep on plugging. The only way to make money in this business, I think, is by putting drill holes into the ground and making a discovery. So we're hoping that this works out. We expect it to work out. And the plan is to drill, drill, drill. Smart guys like Charlie and Neil at the helm. So thank you very much. And thank you for following the story.